Hello, everyone. Welcome. Let's just take a little pause until we get the waiting room cleared out and we get a few more people on. We got a couple more minutes, but great to see everyone. Good evening. We'll wait about 2 more minutes and we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. It's 7:31. We'll give it 2 more minutes. May just wait a couple more minutes. I see some people coming in, so thank you for your patience. I know that there were 2 other meetings going on tonight, so I'm not sure if it's possible to participate in 2 meetings at a time, but we will see how this evening goes. It's going to be great, actually. Okay, I see all our presenters. Waiting on one more. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm Arlene McDonald with Indiana Swimming. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Believe it or not, it was exactly 3 months ago tonight, July 27th, when we had the first one of these return to competition gatherings. And I was looking through the agenda for that evening in preparation for tonight, and it was like it gave me a headache because there were 1,000 bullet points about things like restrooms, entries, exits, and all of that. And so we're here tonight to kind of share what we've learned over the last 3 months and to also kind of put our thoughts together on how to go through the next 3 to 4 to 5 months successfully. When I think back on that night, there's some takeaways that I kind of think about, and maybe some of these will come up tonight, but I think the biggest one was that we were going to accept the fact and embrace the fact that things were going to change, that we were going to have to do things differently. I think in an LSC that prides itself on having beautiful facilities, fast swimming, and great event hosts, that's probably been a challenge for a lot of us. We were going to have to learn to do more with less. We had to get out of the mindset that we were going to have 1,100 athletes on a pool deck, and that our clubs and our organizations were going to, a big part of the revenue stream was going to be from hosting meets. We were going to have to get by with less volunteers, less coaches on the deck. And I think a lot of you have adapted really well to that. And then I think the last thing that I kind of took away from that evening was the value of the partnerships that you had, not only with your facilities, but with clubs in your areas and all your community organizations. So hopefully those things have served you well over the last 3 months. I've been in communication with some of our presenters for this evening, and it's been really fun for me. I personally, if you don't mind my sharing this story, I have not been involved in leading an event since, oh dear Lord, January. And I've learned a lot from all of you. I typically, no matter how large the meet is, whether if it's a televised event or whether there's 2 volunteers or 1,000 volunteers, I typically don't get nervous about anything. And I typically, because I typically have a plan, and we all know that if we have a plan that works or that we've tweaked over the years and we have great people leading, that we have been successful over the years. Well, this weekend we're hosting our first very small event at the Natatorium since February. And I will tell you that I am more nervous about this than any event I've ever done. So we put together a new playbook with a great team of volunteer leaders, but I'm looking forward to all of us collectively kind of looking at what our new playbooks look like as we go through this evening and see how we can support each other as we go through the coming months. That being said, so our goal tonight is to kind of learn from each other, share, and see where, help each other head in through the next few months successfully. My computer is acting up a little bit, but just a couple of things about Zoom. I think we've all gotten really used to this. It's really hard to conduct a meeting and share when you see a phone number. So if there's any way you can turn your video camera on, I'm sometimes guilty of this, particularly when I'm eating dinner. But if you can have your camera on, that would be great. If you would rename yourself with your club code in case you have something to share and people want to know who you are. If you don't know how to do that, you go to your toolbar where it says participants, you find your name, you click on more, and a text box will pop up and you can put your name and your club code in there. Please mute your microphone except when speaking, and obviously type questions into the chat. We're not going to be too formal here this evening, but we do have to have a little bit of order to make it meaningful. So we'll kind of do an overview of our agenda. Michelle is going to talk to us about sanctioning and scheduling, where we are, what you can expect in the next few months, what's new, what's different, what's the same. We're going to kind of do an overview where there's going to be sharing amongst us of what's been happening in the last 3 months with USA Swimming and where we're heading with that. Then the feature of the night is going to be 3 of our colleagues who are going to share their experiences with us. Betsy Pratt from Avon, Emily Kennedy from Valparaiso, and Kevin from Elkhart. And I know that a lot of you have hosted some meets over the last few months, and we hope that you will engage in this discussion as well. But these 3 teams have hosted, or facilities have hosted some of the largest events in the LSC over the last 3 months. So they're going to share with us their experiences. And then we're going to talk about what's coming up, and then again, have more sharing at the end. So if you haven't done this before on Zoom, this is really kind of fun. We've got a map of Indiana up here. If you would go, we want to learn who's with us tonight and where your hometowns are. So if you could go to the top of your screen and hover up the top and choose view options, and then click on annotate, and then go to the stamp feature and pick your favorite symbol and place your symbol on the state of Indiana where your club is located. And we'll take a few minutes to do that. This is one of my favorite activities because we kind of know, it kind of gives us a snapshot. Somebody in Northwestern Indiana is questioning there.
Perfect.
But I love it. Somebody's drawing for us. I love that. But it is kind of fun to see who's with us this evening. So we have one Southern Indiana person down there that looks like maybe Bloomington or Jasper, I thought I saw. So anyway, just a great visual of all the athletes that we serve around the state, all the great things that we're doing together, all the opportunities that we're providing. And with one click of the mouse, I'm going to hopefully clear all that off. And we're going to return to be One Team Indiana and move forward with putting our playbooks together for the next few months. So that being said, thank you for that. For some reason, there we go. Let's get started. So we're going to start with Michelle. Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
So most of you have already been involved in the new sanctioning process. There is a lengthy new sanctioning form that is on the Indiana Swimming website. It's been there since about July. So we have been updating that periodically as new mandates come out from USA Swimming and things like that. So it's about a 6-page document. A lot of it is recommendations and thoughts that you need to be thinking through as you prepare for your meet. A couple of changes from the quote unquote normal, or let's say old sanctioning process are as follows. You will need to, in addition to your sanctioning application, submit a facility usage agreement. It says a facility certification. That's just an email from an aquatics director, athletic director, whoever governs over your facility where you're hosting your meet, saying that you have permission to host your competition in that facility. And we are going to ask you to submit that with each sanction that you submit. Along with your facility then, you're being asked to submit a safety plan, and that's where you're going to line up all of the things that are special because of COVID, whether that be entrances in and out, limits, that kind of thing. You're going to want to include all of that stuff in your safety plan. And again, that doesn't have to come from your facility, but that should be made in conjunction with your facility. One of the big changes for us is that previously we hadn't required meet announcements for things like inter squads and dual meets and that kind of thing. But we are now requiring meet announcements for all meets. So I've been working on some templates for a dual meet sanction or meet announcement. There's not as many things as maybe you need to include in that as you might an invitational. But I've been working on meet templates for both dual meets, inter squads, that kind of thing, and for invitationals, because there are new requirements with COVID statements that need to be in there, and safety or APT statements that need to be in there for adult swimmers or athletes over 18 and that kind of thing. So I'm in the process of sort of getting those looked over by other members of the staff, and those will be posted here in the next few days. We're hoping to make the inter-squad dual meet one actually a fillable form where you can just plop in your specific information, and it's not a lengthy process, but we get all the information in there that we need. I think everybody's aware that we've sort of done away with the 45-day ahead of time to sanction and all of that, because some of us don't know until the last minute that we can host competitions. So please just get those to me as soon as you can get everything to me. I'm trying to get those turned around within 24, 48 hours. But please remember, I do have another job, so don't send it to me 10 minutes before your meet starts and think that I'm gonna get it back to you. Another thing I do want to request is if you have open invitationals on the schedule and you know that you are not going to be able to host those, please let us know. I've been trying to update the meet grids on the website as much as I can and as quickly as I can, because I know people are looking for meets. I talked to a meet host today that was getting entries for a meet that they're not even going to be able to host. So please get me that information and I'll mark those as canceled or closed invite or whatever on the website, and we'll try to keep that as updated as we can. The other thing, two other things I just wanted to mention. I mentioned this summer, but I'll reiterate that we are requiring pre-meet backups for all meets, even dual meets, inter squads, that kind of thing, so that we can check 18 and over athletes and some registration things and that kind of thing. We're kind of asking you to not take on decks, but if you're going to, please make sure that you let me know that you've done that so that we can check those athletes as we move forward. And particularly be aware of the 18 and over. If a swimmer 18 or over participates in your meet and they are not, have not completed the APT training, their times will not be loaded into swims. So please be aware of that. Lastly, I wanted to just clarify some things with legislation that were passed at our HOD involving surcharges. As you probably are aware, or hopefully your club has made you aware, that we passed some legislation for increased surcharges through this COVID crisis, allowing host clubs to charge a higher surcharge for 3-day meets, up to a $20 surcharge, for 2-day meets up to a $15 surcharge, and for 1-day meets up to a $7 surcharge. And I just want to make sure everyone is aware that you will still be charged the $2 per athlete surcharge that you've always been charged. But that means that starting November 1, any meets after this weekend on are going to be charged for a 3-day meet, the $2 additional COVID relief fund surcharge, $1 for a 2-day meet for that COVID relief surcharge relief fund. So I'm trying to notify you as I get those sanctions to remind you of that. But if you have any questions about that, please let me know, because you will be getting charged those additional fees for 2- and 3-day meets. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. But that's due to the new legislation that we passed at HOD. Okay, so I don't know if anybody has any questions for me. I'm the bad guy who gets to take care of all this paperwork, and then you guys get to go do the fun stuff and have meets. No questions? If you do, please feel free to email me. It's Michelle with 1L at inswimming.org. I'm happy to work with you however I can so we can get these kids back racing. So thank you.
Any questions for Michelle? You can unmute yourself and just speak up. Anyone? All right, we will move forward. If you were at House of Delegates or some of the other meetings that have gone on, I just want to kind of talk through some things happening with USA Swimming. Some of them obviously have a direct effect on us. I think as we went through this COVID crisis, and if you were engaged in a lot of the online or the virtual workshops and things that USA Swimming has been doing, I really feel like as an NGB, they have really led the nation with keeping our members engaged as we've gone through, obviously, these very unusual times. And part of that has been their philosophy about competitions, the crawl, walk, race theme that we've been looking at over the last few months. And some of our clubs have engaged in that. Some of these things are coming up. But when we were at the Virtual House of Delegates for USA Swimming, I sat in on the steering committee meeting one day, and the steering committee is composed of a lot of the, the most accomplished coaches across the country. And one comment that was made that kind of resonates with me is that, this was in the, this granted was last month and it was still warm out and sunny, but, he said, kids are playing soccer, kids are playing baseball, kids are playing softball. If we can't get athletes back into some kind of competition and keep the fun in the sport, we're going to end up, it's not going to be a pretty picture for us. So I think our NGB has led the way. And the first program that they did was a Speedo Swim Again virtual series. It's now ended. And this is the leaderboard from the first week. I didn't see anybody from Irish registered, but maybe they've joined us. But Joe Keller, I've asked Joe to speak about this program. I know it's finished, but just kind of how his club embraced it, what it meant to their team, the takeaways from the program, and any kind of things that he learned that might, be applicable to what we might be doing over the next few months. So Joe, can you take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Arlene. And I apologize. My camera doesn't work. And that's probably best for all of you anyway. So, but appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, we, once USA Swimming rolled this out, we took a look at it to see how we can make it fit into what some of our vision and goals were. And so we developed basically kind of a 6-week plan that we called our Fast Falloween Frenzy. And within that, we utilized the 4 weeks of the virtual series. We kind of went along with the way it was laid out with USA Swimming on a weekly basis. And then at the conclusion of that, the following week, actually on October 14th, we hosted a swim-a-thon within our program. And then during that time frame, we also hosted a dual meet. And so it provided a lot of opportunities for us, but ultimately our goal was and we were trying to find a way to make sure that we kept our kids connected with competitive spirit. And so that really became our goal. The 4 weeks, then we selected Wednesday nights. And so on 4 consecutive Wednesdays, then we utilized the meet program, the format that USA Swimming had utilized through this. And 2 of those weeks, the first and the 4th week, was an IMX, IMR type event. The 2nd week was a modified high school meet format. And then the 3rd week was distance events. And of course, that was quite interesting with some of our 8 and unders to see if they could complete up to even 1,000 yards. And so the kids had a great time with it. We made a big deal out of it. We decided on every Wednesday minus the distance week to have 3 sessions. And so we started with a 15 and over session, had an 11 to 14 session, and then our 10 and under session. And we ran it like we would any other meet, but it was a non-sanctioned event. And USA Swimming, they offered this as an opportunity where it could be sanctioned or non-sanctioned. And so we chose to go that route. But we used all the other parameters, and then our dual meet fit into the sanctioned event component of that. But and then we just sent in the results every week. We did use Facebook Live, and that was highly popular, and it was a great opportunity for us to build some excitement towards our swim-a-thon and to create some sponsorship opportunities in that as well. And we used no adults other than our coaching staff. And so it gave our athletes the opportunity after they completed their race to essentially hit the backup buttons for the next race before they headed off. And then we called the next heat up. And so you could actually see that via some of our Facebook Live, how that was set up. But we utilized the distancing. We utilized our entire spectator area for our athletes during that time. And then the deck was really pretty clear. Each session lasted about an hour. So it was quick, it was easy, the kids loved it. And probably the thing that I heard most from parents was the fact that because we had time, we were able to announce each kid's name before they step up onto the block to compete. And via Facebook Live, grandparents, everyone as such just loved that, thought it was awesome. So I would encourage you, if USA Swimming provides something like this in the future, to find a way to make it fit into your program. But it was probably one of the most successful 6-week spans that we've had in the history of our program.
Thank you, Joe. Questions for Joe? You can type them in the chat. Michelle is monitoring that. Or you can just unmute and speak up. Michelle, do you see anything? Okay, we will move on. So the next upcoming program from USA Swimming is the National Leaderboard. It started, well, this month is about over, but this is more of an individual type of leaderboard where each athlete's times will count if they achieve a USA Swimming Future Standard. So as you go through the next few months, be thinking about how you might utilize this program, you know, like Joe said, to kind of inspire and keep the competitive spirit going in your club. Does anybody have anything to share about any of their plans for this particular program? Okay. Then the next one is the Toyota US Open. I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about this. I know that we have a lot of our clubs are coming to the NAT in about 2.5 weeks. We have been really blessed with our partnership with the NAT. Ed's on with us, Ed Merkling from the NAT. He's going to talk a little bit later on in the program, but it has been really invigorating to be part of this process. There was a lot of, I guess, anxiety associated with it because we were already out on social media as being a site before our final approval had come through. And ironically enough, the final approval came through the day that USA Swimming hosted the town hall Q&A. So we were very fortunate. But talking about partnerships, Ed and his team have been amazing. But one of the greatest things for me personally, and I think for all of us, and Lucy Duncan is on another call tonight, but she is the meet referee for all 9 sites. So she and I have had our 5:00 a.m. calls about every morning to talk about this, which has been a lot of fun to reconnect with Lucy. But these meets are being held from Oregon to California to Texas to Des Moines to Indiana to Greensboro to Huntsville to Richmond, and once a week, we're able to be on a call with all the sites, Ed and I and Lucy as the meet referee. And it's been a really invigorating process learning from them, just like we're doing tonight. So we opened entries a week ago today. It was one of the most interesting days, any of you that ever been involved in OME. So our men's entries closed in 11 minutes, and OME does not shut down automatically. And Kevin has had a lot of experience with OME as well. And so it was really a race to the finish on trying to get things shut down when we got to exactly our limit. We still have women's entries open, and we do think there might be some changes to fill these meets, so stay tuned. But we are excited about this. Those of you who are entered, we have 8 women's teams and 9 men's teams. And we did change our start times. All the meet announcements and everything are posted on USA Swimming. We also have our own logo with our name on it, which is always exciting. And we are going to do 4 o'clock and 9 o'clock. If your teams are in the meet, we are going to combine the 800s on Thursday evening, and you'll be getting an email about that next week. So we're really excited to be able to do this. Our limit was 100 men and 100 women. And basically there will be 2 sessions a day, and it's pretty complicated, but we have a coaches meeting coming up, and we're really excited about being invited to do that. The other program is the 18 and under Winter Championships. Any of you can host these and send in your results. Does anybody want to speak to any plans they have for this particular program?
Yeah, Arlene, you want me to go?
Sure.
Yeah, we're Jeff Cooper and Oli typically do their big winter invite at the Nat the weekend after Thanksgiving. They're going to host. They're basically doing a full. They were going to do a full club dual meet. It's going to be a tri-meet, quad meet, whatever it was going to be. 3.5 days prelim finals. Thursday night long course, and then prelim finals Friday, Saturday, Sunday for senior kids. We're working right now to figure out what our real capacity is going to be, because between their 2 senior groups, it's about 150 athletes. We're trying to see if we can get to 200, so we could, in theory, open it up to about 50 additional spots for the junior national level kids. So as soon as we get that, already been kind of talking back and forth with Tony a little bit. As soon as we have a meet info and we have a final number, we'll blast it out to everybody. But in the meantime, anybody that wants to be interested or be on that list or whatever, reach out to me or Coop, and we'll start just kind of putting together some RSVPs and seeing where we're at.
Thank you, Kevin. Tony or Joe, do you want to add anything to the discussion?
Yeah, Arlene, we're going to be hosting an event in conjunction with what would be our traditional Santa Claus meet on December 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We too are going to run a long course time trial. Actually, I'm sorry, the 4th, 5th, 6th. Let's try that. And we're going to run a time trial on Thursday the 3rd. Again, long course. And then we are basically setting it up as if it would be 2 meets on the 4th, 5th, and 6th, a component where we could still serve those that would like to participate in the Santa Claus traditional meet that we have, and then still be able to accommodate the Winter Junior Nat Championship meet as well. And that portion of the event, our typical Santa Claus meet's a prelim final. It will be time final, but then we will have a prelim final with the Winter Junior National component. Currently, we have been told that we could have up to 300 people in the facility for each of those sessions. And then at that point, we have, I guess, worked within our club to assure that we would have at least 75 spots up to that for junior level qualifiers. So yeah, so if anyone is interested, especially in the junior national component or the time trial long course, specifically if someone's looking to try to get a trials cut, then they can reach out to me or Alec Haley.
Great. Tony, any other sites have anything to add?
Nothing at this point. We're still reaching out to everybody who is hosting a meet during that time frame in early December, reaching out to the hosts, see if their clubs or their facilities are available. We've had no other interest at this point. As Arlene mentioned, though, anybody can host this event at their clubs, but both Kevin and Joe have opportunities for great competition, which may make that difference, and also the long course time trials. So keep that in mind if you're looking to, because we're still not sure if those Olympic trials time standards will change after the beginning of the year, but we're hoping that we can make some cuts prior to that, just in case.
Great. Be sure you contact Tony or Joe if you have any opportunity to provide this type of experience. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention a couple of things about the US Open. It is a long course event. It's going to be a great competition. Some of the teams, besides our great teams in Indiana, a lot of the universities are coming, including IU, Louisville, Michigan. We have a couple of Olympic medalists entered. That doesn't mean they're going to compete, but we do. A lot of the national team is in Budapest right now with the ISL, but we do have at least entered in the meet. Michael Brenninger, I see Jennifer on there, Cody Miller and Kathleen Baker, and all those university teams. So it's going to be a great competition for our athletes that are participating. Stay tuned on maybe some new guidelines for filling the women's meet. We are going to learn more about that. So now to the feature of the evening. I'd like to welcome Betsy, Emily, and Kevin back. And we just kind of threw out some questions to them. This is not necessarily, this is just the script to follow, but kind of guidelines about what we asked them to talk about. Like I mentioned earlier, their teams have hosted some of the largest invites in the state. And so had a long talk with John Carr out at Avon, and Betsy's agreed to be on with us tonight. Emily and Valpo, she's got a great story to tell, and Kevin. And so we're just going to go in alpha order by first name. So Betsy, you're up first. So you want to take it away?
Betsy's on mute.
So sorry. I
That's
still
okay.
haven't gotten the hang of this yet.
That's okay.
We had our fall classic meet October 3rd. That was the first meet that we've held since since February. Previous meets that we've had have been upward of 500 to 600 swimmers. This one we scaled down to 253. So it was very, very small compared to what we have done previously. And really that's all we've done since the COVID-19 outbreak has hit. We are planning a dual meet coming up, and then again we're having our meet in February. That will be again, it was supposed to be a much larger meet, but it is definitely going to be scaled back. Did you want me to just keep going, or are we going to?
Yes, yeah, I think we
Okay.
will. And as these folks are speaking, I'm sorry, Betsy, excuse me, just kind of be writing down questions that you might want to ask them. I have my list, and hopefully some of you will have your list when we finish. Go ahead, Betsy, I'm sorry.
So, you know, it was our meet. My biggest success of this meet was that I do not know of a single person that contracted or brought any illnesses to our meet. And that was essentially the goal of all the requirements from USA or Indiana Swimming. The greatest challenge would have to be I would say giving the perception that, you know, we are doing everything safely. It is okay to come. It's, you know, we're doing everything we can as far as, you know, cleaning handrails and wearing masks and distancing, and, you know, just really projecting the idea that, you know, we've got a safe environment for people to come and for the kids to come and swim. I would say my biggest surprise hosting that meet was how willing everyone was to chip in and help. I guess I want to go back. One of the hardest challenges was that we had a lot of families that were not willing to come and help work the meet, help, you know, volunteer. So we had to have everyone kind of chip in a little bit extra, and it surprised me that everybody was just willing to drop everything and do what it took to get this meet going. And I mean, we had kids from coaches and parents from other clubs that had stepped up and helped as well. And you know, I hadn't seen that much effort put forth until this year. As far as recommendations for hosting the meet, I would just build your meet off of the number of people you're allowed to have in your natatorium. We were allowed to have 216 between the stands, the deck, and in the pool. So the first thing we did was pull out how many bare minimum do we need volunteers and officials on the pool deck. And then from there, we figured out what's the number of swimmers we can bring in, and then have one spectator per swimmer. So that's where we kind of started, was with the guidelines that the school, Avon High School, gave us their restrictions, and we built the meet from there. We are planning to have a meet, I believe, on November 21st with Plainfield. It's just a dual meet. It's going to be one day. We are already planning for our February meet. I believe it's February 14th. That is supposed to be a 3-day meet. I'm not sure if we're going to continue it with the 3-day long meet, but usually that is a prelims final meet. So I think that's going to be a little bit different than what we've been used to doing before.
Great. Thank you, Betsy. I think we'll proceed. If you have questions, put them in the chat, or we're going to just stop after everybody's finished and kind of go through the questions we have for them collectively. So thank you. That was great information. Emily.
Hello, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I don't even know how to start. We got a new facility, a new 50-meter facility in January. It was our first month that we were allowed to swim in it. And then of course, everybody knows that early March, we were shut down. So we swam in it for about 6 weeks. You know, there's still dust in the stands is how new it was. And so I think that our biggest challenge was running a meet for the first time in 30 years. Valpo Swim Club has not hosted a meet of any kind for a very long time. So our learning curve was ginormous in pretty much every aspect from beginning to end. But the more I've thought about it, I think, you know, we didn't have any expectations. So maybe planning a meet during COVID-19 was easier for us because we started from scratch anyway. So our greatest successes, we hosted this meet the 17th and 18th of October. It was a closed invitational. We allowed 50 swimmers from each team to sign up. We did host 8 and unders all the way through 11 and over. So we did have high school members come from some of the teams. And it ran really well. You know, I can't say enough about what happened that weekend, but it went really well. Our COVID plan worked. It was very operational. Everything flowed well. Everybody knew their jobs. And I only heard positive comments from the coaches. So our greatest challenge, again, was just hosting a meet during a pandemic. I mean, we had such a learning curve on just every aspect of it. Our aquatics director has never hosted an age group meet. He's only done high school. So everybody was learning something new. You know, we were still, you know, we were hoping our board worked. So, and everything went very well. It was very great. I think one of our greatest challenges was just staging swimmers and keeping them from congregating, which I think we were successful, but it took a lot of thought and planning on the part of a lot of people. There were a lot of places that were wet when, you know, normally those places wouldn't be wet. The biggest surprise that I had was that parents still wanted to come and spectate. And that is a big no-no at our facility. We sent that out in all of our information to all of our coaches, to our teams, all of our advertisements, no spectators, and we still had spectators come. So it was good that we had someone at the door and we stopped those parents before they were able to enter into the building very far, and unfortunately had to turn them away. What did we learn? That details count. We walked through our meet as a board and as a coach like we were swimmers, and we walked the entire route of the way the swimmers would be sitting and where they would be going and all of that to make sure that it all flowed well and it all made a lot of sense. So you want to walk through it like a volunteer, like a swimmer, like a coach, and just make sure that everything makes sense, because it does not work when you have 50 people all of a sudden congregating in one spot and you have no place to tell them to go. So Any recommendations I would have would just be have a solid COVID plan and don't make expectations to your rules. You know, we had we had some questions about, well, can we do this instead of that? And, you know, it just doesn't work when you start making expectations for people or teams. We did think that maybe having a Zoom meeting with our volunteers in the future might be helpful. It's kind of hard, and maybe that was just because it's our first meet. It just was a little intense that first morning, and you know, we were trying to tell our parent volunteers what to do. We had like a COVID team. Their whole responsibility was to keep swimmers socially distanced, to keep their masks on, and to help them get to their events. So we had staged. Valpo was on the pool deck, 6 feet apart, one swimmer per spot. And then all of our teams were up in our stands. So it took a little bit longer for the swimmers that were in the stands to make their way down to the deck. And we had a pretty elaborate clerk of course too, that we made all the kids do, 8 and unders all the way up to the high school kids, because we didn't want them congregating behind the blocks. We don't have a lot of deck space in our facility and it just wouldn't work. So we made them line up 4 heats. You know, we have the heat swimming and then 3 heats back, and that's the only swimmers that were allowed. So once, you know, that was pretty elaborate. The coaches really liked that, especially for their 8 and unders. They didn't have to think too hard about getting their kids to their events. We also had each team bring 4 parent volunteers to also help us get their kids to their events and to help us continue to socially distance and keep their masks on. And one of the challenges I also thought was, depending on where your teams are coming from, their recommendations for their county may be different than the county that you're currently in. So Lake and Porter County up here are in a different situation than some of the counties to our south and to our east. And so the kids didn't really understand why they had to do, you know, keep their masks on while they're walking through the hall or whatever. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but, you know, we spoke to their volunteers and it was fine by the end of the meet. Our future plans, we have a meet on the books for early December. I think some of the details of that are still unknown, and we're trying to get some duels and tries on the books for November to keep our kids swimming. Oh, and one thing I guess I didn't talk about. So we televised our meet on YouTube. Our Porter County Career Center kids, which is in conjunction with a high school class, came and videoed the entire meet just like it was ESPN. I mean, it was pretty cool. Our feed wasn't the best, but we've had, to date, I checked today, just under 3,000 hits on the meet, because it's still able to be viewed. Actually, no, that's not true. It's under 4,000. And then we had somewhere between, you know, about 100 viewers for the 8 and under session, and for the 10 and overs, it was more closer to like 180 viewers. So it was really cool. We had people from all over the country watching the meet. So
That's great, Betsy. I have a lot of questions for you, but we'll wait till we get to the Q&A. So Kevin is probably thank you very much. And just to share a little kind of side note, and Emily talked about it being their first meet in 30 years, and we were kind of exchanging emails, and I was hoping to get up to Valpo. It's a long story why I didn't have something to do with my trash can in the driveway. But anyway, when she said we haven't hosted a meet in 30 years, it was like, oh dear. And all the things that you've said have just been inspiring and incredible, and give me some confidence that this is doable. So thank you for sharing that, because it hasn't been quite 30 years for me. So I applaud all of you and your colleagues at Valpo. So thank you.
Yeah, I was telling Arlene that our aquatic director's mom remembers hosting the last meet, and it was about, she said 28 to 30 years ago, but she remembers it. But nobody else in the facility remembered hosting a meet.
That's great. And you know, sometimes there's beauty in that, like you said. because I remember the first time that the club I was associated with did age group state, we had no idea what we were doing. And we sort of did, I shouldn't say that, but we had all these planning meetings and we put together a handbook and all this stuff. And it was like, you know, it was so much fun. So thank you for sharing that. And then we'll move on to Kevin. Kevin is probably our most experienced. So he probably has a lot of things to share. They've up at Elkhart, they've done things incrementally, and it's been a great model to kind of watch and follow. And hats off to Kevin and his team up in Elkhart. So take it away, Kevin.
All right. So we opened up the facility for workouts and everything the day after Memorial Day. So as far as getting in the pool, obviously with the majority of our teams up here being with school districts, we had a lot of folks trying to just get in the water. Starting on May 27th, between then and now, I think we've accommodated 16 different teams from 3 states with practice times. Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio coming over between training trips, and for the better part of 2 months, basically had every lane occupied from 7 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, 6 days a week. So the big thing for us was getting started with all those protocols between how are we getting people in and out of the building, how are we screening everybody. Full transparency for us, I'm the aquatic director. We are operated by a hospital system. So I'm a hospital employee. So we have to do everything the same way we do in all of the hospital facilities. If you're going to be a visitor in the hospital visiting a patient, whatever, whether it was temperature screenings, symptom screenings, logging names, dates, timestamps, the whole 9 yards. We've got it down to a science now. I think we were in upwards of, when we were in our busiest in June, we had upwards of 2,500 swimmers a week coming into our pool. So we kind of learned trial by fire starting out. The biggest thing was just reaching out to all those coaches. Tom was one of them. And I basically just told everybody, it's like, hey, if we want to swim, it's going to be all hands on deck, and we all have to be dynamic, and we all have to be ready for anything. So everyone was on board, and it's just a great experience. The most awesome part was just simply having all those coaches that have never really ever shared a deck with each other, sharing a deck and shooting the breeze, on the pool deck with other coaches, having 3 and 4 teams practicing at a time. It was really a great atmosphere, which I think has kind of contributed to kind of the culture that we have up here of everyone supporting it, everyone else's meets. We started running our first unofficial meet end of June, where we basically just went through and got with all the coaches and just said, hey, we're just going to take one whole day, set up the timing system. We ran 4 or 5 lanes and just ran time trials all day long. And coaches just brought kids over and just getting kids in the groove of how do we stay spread out behind the blocks? How do we keep our mask on until step up happens? All that kind of stuff. And we basically sat there and we ran that Colorado and just resetting and letting it run and go. I think we ran like 300 heats over like 11 hours of swimming and just kind of learning every step. Since then, we've had meets 13 weekends between 4th of July and now. Again, dual meets, tri meets, invites, everything under the sun, some unofficial, some sanctioned. The biggest thing was, like we said, the incremental addition of kids every single week was the biggest thing. We started out our proposal to our the hospital system as well as the county and the city was, okay, well, we know we're going 6 kids per lane long course. We have 60 kids in the pool. So can we have 60 kids in a swim meet? We're already doing it every day. We've proven it for a month. So let's do that. Then documented pictures on the deck. What does 60 kids in this pool deck look like? Look at how many empty sets of bleachers we have. Look, we are successful at spreading kids out. We're successful at having 3 or 4 kids per set of bleacher. We are keeping them distance. We are keeping them masked at all times until they're on the blocks or they're in the water. We did it at 60, then we went to 80, then we went to 100. 120. Now we're starting to work our way up and up from there. We're hoping, in November and December here, we can close to those 150 and 200 numbers. I have several hoops I have to jump through for every level of approvals that we have. I have 3 out of 4 approvals right now to try to get us closer to 200 athletes at a time. We are allowing spectators up in the stands. We've been doing that for about 3 weeks now. It did force us to get really, really good. And it seemed like every week we would run a meet, we'd get better at, between our webcasting game and things that we're doing. So now we've got all figured out with, running YouTube Live and having, picture in picture with scoreboards and all that kind of fun stuff. And we just try to keep getting that little bit better every single time we do one of these. Successfully, I think the biggest thing around here is just about every kid that wanted to get into a meet and every team, we've done everything we can to accommodate it. We've had weekends that we ran, 8 or 9 sessions, and it was 3 separate meet hosts running their own meets, somebody on Friday, somebody on Saturday, somebody on Saturday afternoon, somebody on Sunday. For us, it was always, me being a facilities guy, if I only had to set up my timing system one time and break it down one time, more the merrier. We'll get people in and out, and we'll keep going all day and all night if we have to. So it's been a lot of fun. And the biggest thing for us has been, there's been a learning curve at every single incremental increase. So anybody that is, and we have a facility where we're fortunate, we fit 1,200 spectators and almost 900 athletes on the deck in a normal pre-COVID world. So we have the gift of space. And there are things that we learned going from 60 athletes to 100 athletes, and from 100 athletes to 120 athletes, that we have made adaptations and we've made changes. So the biggest word of caution that I have for anybody is, if all of a sudden the shackles are removed and they say you can jump in with 100 athletes, I caution you to do everything you can to baby step it. Start with what you know, start with what you've been doing, and then make incremental increases from there. Because if not, it will bite you in the rear end. And obviously with COVID and safety, we can't afford to do that. And all the things that we learned between shifting from short course, going long course meets all summer, and now short course, we start and finish off of a bulkhead. So for us, we've always been really good at limiting the number of people on the bulkhead at a time. Obviously, through our meets of no spectators, getting volunteers was a piece of cake. Parents were lined up and fighting when that volunteer sign up opened up. And we had a number of meets that it was hysterical. I think it was when Tom did their dual meet with Duneland and Concord, and all the Duneland parents that were obviously they had to drive to get there. It was like a tailgate party outside.
Same.
They were, and we have windows up and down one side of our pool, and they all had their lawn chairs, and they're out there. They're bringing pop-up tents and cornholes and barbecues and the whole 9 yards, which you're just sitting here just like, oh God, just please keep your distancing and whatever. Which under normal circumstances, it would be the greatest thing in the world. And we would be embracing it to the nth degree of, we're making swimming awesome. There's a tailgate experience. It's fun, all that kind of stuff. But how do we go through and, maintain those standards of, we are doing all this extra work to keep everyone safe? It can't be, Armageddon outside. And I'm sure some of you that have hosted meets have seen it, where we're going through and we have kids spread out and there's X's on the deck, and we got masks, and you got, like for us, we've been averaging between 6 and 10 additional volunteers on the pool deck as meet marshals, literally just walking around being the distancing marshals. And they are just watching kids like hawks of who doesn't have a mask on. If they take their mask off, take a drink. Are they putting their mask on back on right away? Are they just taking their mask off for 2 seconds to adjust their goggles or put their caps on or whatever it is? Are they putting it right back on? All that kind of stuff. And, then we have, a tailgate party out in the parking lot. So Yeah. So again, it's a weird world. But again, I think the things that we learn between how we stage kids, where we put relays in sessions, we've done a lot of our meets with relays that we've been running only the odd lanes or only the even lanes for our 200 relays, because, for us, with starting and finishing off a bulkhead with a 200 relay, 800 relay, piece of cake. You get the first 2 kids out on the bulkhead, and as soon as one comes off, you add a new one on. No big deal. But for 200 relays, for anybody, you just don't have the time to get people off in time. So it's like, all right, we'll run just the odd lanes, leave the even lanes empty, and then the kids swimming in lane 1 will basically be kind of lined up behind lanes 1 and 2, and the kids in 3 behind 3 and 4, and so on. So, but yeah, it's been fun. We obviously wouldn't do this if we didn't enjoy it. We've had a busy calendar up till then. We have a very busy calendar coming up. I think between now and the end of short course right now, we have on the calendar somewhere in the neighborhood of about just under 60 days of competition scheduled right now. High school, club, college, everything. And we're basically, the fun part is going through and trying to re-educate everyone every single weekend, because the away teams coming in that have not been trained on what our policies, what our procedures, how we're doing this. So we're just trying to go through and everything we can do now with, now that we've upped the webcasting game and everything, of trying to review those, send that out to teams that had never attended before. This is what a meet looks like here. This is how we're flowing one-way traffic on bulkheads. Really staying on those, our distancing marshals on the pool deck. Luckily, parents have been great. Every single meet, even with spectators with masks on 100% of the time upstairs. I think this past weekend for a college meet was the first time that we really had to have words with anybody. Most everyone else, if they went off, they took their mask off to take a drink or take a bite of food or whatever, and they just forgot to put their mask on. And most of the time you kind of wave up at them and say, hey, point your mask, well, what's going on? They go, oh my gosh, sorry. They put their mask back on, and it's not a problem anymore. We had our first weekend we had to boot a bozo out, but it is what it is. So we told them what the house rules are. This is what we got to do. Is one of those things that all we could really chalk it up to was the college teams that were there for the meet. They really didn't lose anything. They finished their season last season, and they got to start their season on time this season. So do we chalk it up to they just don't have the same appreciation that a lot of us on the club scene do? We had the rug pulled out from under us. We know, what it was like to lose it, and we don't want to lose it again. And that's kind of what we've, given the biggest credit for why a lot of this has worked and everyone's been so great to work with. It was that level of appreciation that it's going to be the same kind of curious thing when we open back up and we get high school season rolling around here. Well, we had a lot of these high school kids that got to finish out their season. They didn't miss anything. Hopefully they have some appreciation because they missed proms and they missed graduations. They missed all kinds of stuff at the end of last school year, that they don't take it for granted. But we'll see when we start hosting those first couple high school dual meets, because we all know with a high school team, you get a very different bell curve, and the one extreme end of that bell curve, you have some real bozos sometimes. So that's the only part that kind of scares me going into the next couple of months here. So,
Kevin, that's amazing information, and thank you for all the opportunities you're providing up there. And I'm sure all those clubs have been very grateful and love the collaboration, because that's really what we all need to be doing right now. So thank you so much. Great information. So that kind of leads us into questions for our experts. And Michelle, are you looking at the chat? Can you monitor that? Do you see anything in the chat? Because I have a list of questions based on my anxieties moving forward. Is there anything in the chat, Michelle? Is Michelle here?
Nope, I'll watch it.
Okay, okay. Emily, you mentioned about communication with your volunteers, and you said that everyone worked together well. And Kevin, all of you kind of addressed this. Do you have any tips for, like, I guess my biggest anxiety is like the very first morning when our virtual volunteer meeting, oddly enough, was going on tonight at the same time. When we planned this 2 or 3 months ago, we didn't realize all of that. But getting everybody on the same page that first day, do you have any tips for that?
We had our COVID volunteers come in a little early so that they could spend some time with our board president and what his vision was for them to do. Now, we had to do that almost every session, but by the second day, everybody kind of understood what that role was, and that spiel kind of got a little shorter and shorter. That's the only thing I would say. Either do it ahead of time or just have them come in a little bit early.
Okay. And I know that all of your meets have been kind of closed invites for the most part, but one of my biggest like unknowns is the mask storage piece of it. Like, you know, and also the other piece of that I want to ask you is, are you allowing athletes to wear anything behind the blocks, like warm-ups or anything? Can all of you or any of you address how you're managing that? I know that most people are using Ziploc bags, but where are you putting them? How do you feel about those spaces during warm-ups when multiple athletes are in the lane? What are you doing with masks? So the mask piece and the behind the blocks attire, can any of you speak to that?
I mean, I can, at least at our facility. So as far as warm-ups and cool downs, we assigned every team a lane depending on what session, how many athletes they had, no more than 5 swimmers to a lane. So that's how we dealt with that part. As far as behind the blocks, yes, we did allow, and not only did we allow, but we encouraged the swimmers to wear or bring a towel in their warm-ups, because we were snaking them through the school and it was cold in the hallway and we didn't want them to be cold. So we encouraged them to wear their sweats. We only had 1 timer. So we put 2 chairs out. One would have been for the timer if they were sitting. The other chair was for their sweats. We did want the swimmers to wear their masks all the way until they stepped on the blocks. They shoved them in a baggie and put it right at underneath the block. It was the first thing that they put on when they got out. So we encouraged them to bring extra masks as they got very wet. We had extra, we did have disposable masks and baggies if anybody forgot, but for the most part, all the teams brought all of their own goods. And that didn't seem to be a problem, except for the 25s and the 8 and unders. So we had to have someone take them from the bulkhead to, the start. So
We had to do the same thing, and it was kind of funny to watch it.
yeah, and we hadn't thought of that. So that was one of those things like on the fly, like, okay, who's doing this?
I had other swimmers running back and forth.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Betsy, how did you handle the clothing piece behind the blocks?
Everyone was stationed on the pool deck, and we asked, so we had stations set up for clerk of course in different heats, and we asked, if you're going to wear something, have someone come and get it from you before you get to the blocks, because when heat 1's getting out and heat 2's coming up, we didn't want them to be at the blocks putting their stuff back on, and everybody getting kind of mixed up right around that block area. So we asked them to leave their things in their seating area on the deck, and then they'd approach the blocks. We had a tub, just a little like Rubbermaid tote tub that everyone was tossing their things in as they went up to the blocks. And then when they'd get out, they'd take everything out of the blocks and then proceed on. We wouldn't allow anyone to approach the blocks until that heat was out of the way and completely down on the other end of the pool, and then they could move forward.
Great, thank you. Kevin, any thoughts on that piece of it?
Yeah, we've been trying to encourage the kids, obviously with the most of the masks being the behind the ear loops. It doesn't work at all if you have cap and goggles on. So we've been encouraging kids either bring in the neck gaiters or a lot of them have done, there's like the little clip things or whatever it is when you have the ear ones, that it's almost like a piece of plastic with a couple hooks on it that you hook it on so it's not holding on to your ears, so that they can have their caps and goggles on. They can just take it off, because the ones that don't, they end up just standing there and like holding their mask against their face,
Yeah.
which is completely defeats the purpose of not touching your face. And for us behind the blocks, again, with the bulkhead situation, we've done clearing and walking out, and we've done flyovers. So it's with us with blocks that have wedges. Everyone brings a Ziploc bag, puts it, they basically, with those Omega blocks, they basically kind of just sit right behind the ledge. No big deal. And then, for meets where timeline isn't really a big deal, we've just been going through, let kids clear out, and then they grab their mask and they start walking that way. And when lane 1 gets to about lane 4 or 5, we'll step the next group on the bulkhead behind them. So nobody's crossing paths with anybody else without their mask on. Really the only person that has any exposure to the kids without the mask on is the timer there behind the lane. And basically when the kids climb out, we basically tell them, once you step out, and your feet hit the bulkhead, don't walk anywhere until you put your mask on. Don't move your feet until you put your mask on. And then once you put your mask on, you can go through, we'll parade you off the bulkhead. Flyovers have worked the same way. The fun part is always reminding our deck marshals and our meet ref and starting team of, even if we're doing flyovers, that we can't do flyovers for backstroke. We can't load the next set of kids on the bulkhead because we have to get the backstrokers out of the water, get them off the bulkhead before we can load the next crew, which pretty much every single meet we've screwed up on the first heat. So again, like I preached earlier, start small. You're going to screw up. I would much rather screw up with 60 kids there versus trying to jump in with 200 and screw up. Because those screw ups are going to be a lot big. Those screw ups will be a lot bigger. The screw ups that we've had when we moved from 100 kids to 120 kids were so small and minuscule that all the other details we already ironed out. So mask choice has been a big thing, and obviously bringing multiple masks.
No, that's great information. I just had one more thing. Michelle, are there any other questions in the chat?
Yeah, we had a question about with the inability to have very many fans in the stands and collecting admissions from parents. If any of you did any sort of advertising or ways that your viewers to your Facebook Live or whatever could make donations to the club in lieu of the admission charges to make some money that way. So.
Did not.
Nope.
Okay. Anything else? Is anybody doing hospitality? And if so, what does that look like for you?
We did do hospitality for our meet. They knocked it out of the park in such a short amount of time. I was so impressed with them, but we did box lunches and breakfast pretty much for everything. It was kind of amazing. One of our donut places up here, it's through a gas station. I had requested that everything be individually wrapped if possible. They've been doing it for the longest time. They individually wrapped hundreds of donuts. Not just for us, it's just what they were doing, but it was amazing. I was impressed as all get out, but we did have box lunches for everybody. Our tables were set up such that there were probably, I think, 2 people per table, and then we had set up some extra tables in the hallway so that the officials and coaches could feel comfortable if they wanted to sit in there and eat, that they were socially distanced.
Is anybody else doing hospitality?
We did much like Emily's team, we did a boxed lunches, but we actually, our board approved a certain amount of money. We went to the store and we bought a bunch of prepackaged, individually served drinks and snacks. We did not have a hospitality room, but we did have a hallway where we stationed where the officials meetings were taking place. And then where you could also have lunch. We had several tables lined out there with 2 chairs per table, so you had to be socially distanced. And then we would, you know, we pushed our hospitality card around and allowed whoever was volunteering to get what they needed, but it was passed to them with someone with gloves on. We weren't allowing people to just take and grab whatever they wanted off of it. And it worked pretty well. It was not what we are used to. We were, you know, we were used to, you know, having our families cook these big, great, elaborate meals and dishes, and you know, it's just not feasible right now. And so we did a lot of, we did Chick-fil-A one day, and then we did Jimmy John's another day, and it was fine. It was great. You know, it worked. It served its purpose. I don't think anybody was hungry. So it worked out just fine.
Kevin, are you doing anything like that up there?
Just real low key, with most of our sessions being on the shorter side, and then having gap time, we call it gap time, that when the session finishes, trying to have 20-30 minutes and nobody there to let the building completely evacuate before we have the next group showing up, plus warm-ups for the next session. You know, most of our officials have had upwards of, like, you know, 90 minutes to 2 hours between sessions sometimes. So we'll walk down the street and get lunch. We have a brand new Martin's like 4 blocks from the facility. We'll walk down and we'll get barbecue, or somebody will take an order. We've been fortunate because the weather's been nice. So we just all sit out on the patio and, you know, or sack lunch. And we've done Jimmy John's. We've done, I think, Andrew and Stars did their meat. They basically just went through and just, you know, pulled out a Mexican menu and said, hey, what do you guys all want? And they just ordered each official and all the coaches lunch, and
It's a good idea.
just sat and just took our time. And, you know,
So mostly for the people that were staying over between sessions then.
pretty much. I mean, again, with you know, limited number of officials and short sessions, we kind of always joke during every officials brief of like, hey, we don't have any relief, but the session's only like an hour and 45 minutes.
Right.
So,
Right.
and we're going to take like 2 10-minute breaks in between. So if anybody needs a bathroom break or go, you know, grab a water bottle or whatever, it's no big deal. Because we have senior kids trying to do 3 events in 2 hours. So you got to take, you know, 2 15-minute breaks anyway. So it's pretty, you know, not terribly heavy lifting, except for those, you know, those volunteers and those meat refs that are there all day long. So the ones that are there all day long, treat them like gold, order them a nice lunch, get them some time off their feet. But all the rest of them, all those other, you know, volunteers and everything, they're only there for an hour and a half and they get out of there. So.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Michelle, are there any more questions in the chat?
No.
Okay, I know we're going a little over, but I will just kind of speed this up, but I don't want to overlook something. I think we still have Ed Merkling on the phone, but I wanted to give Ed an opportunity, not only because he's a great partner of us, but kind of give you an idea of what's going on here and the value of the partnership that we have with the natatorium. I look at this picture, and I don't know if any of you were around, but this is the 2009 National Championships. It always gives me goosebumps because it was the last time we sold the Nat out 5 nights in a row. And so it was one of my favorite events, obviously, because it was just such a well-attended and well-supported event. But I'd like to kind of turn it over to Ed for just a few minutes to kind of share some of his journey the last few months and where we're heading here in Indy. So Ed?
Thanks, Arlene. I appreciate the time. And I'll be quick. I do want to take a second to thank Betsy, Emily, and Kevin. Lots of great information. We are behind the game here by quite a bit, and listening to you guys and some of the experiences you guys have had already will be super helpful for us getting started this weekend. Also do want to thank Tony as well for the phone calls throughout this time frame. Has been super helpful and supportive of the facility and just kind of the direction that we're heading. Arlene asked me to talk just kind of, briefly about what we've been through. And honestly, it's not much different than everything that you guys have been through. All of us, or most of us, I should say, are working, or have a pool within an academic, whether it's a high school or, college or whatever. So priority has been faculty, staff, and students. And then we fit in after that. So it's been a challenge from that standpoint at IU. And we were very fortunate to get some things going in early August. So I know Kevin had talked about, May and June. And so we weren't able to get up and going until early August. And that was just with IUPUI practicing. We had them in for about 2 weeks. And then we were able to end in lap swim. And lap swim, much like everybody else, is now a reserved situation. So people are reserving their spot online prior to coming in. So that way we can control the amount of people that we have coming into our facility. After that, it was kind of about a month or so before we were able to add in Indiana International School of Diving and Masters. And all of this stuff is with the caveat that we can only have 24 people in our facility at a time. And that's coming down from the chancellor. And that's how we can get groups in and without going through the approval process through IU, which I'll talk about that in a second, but that's taken us a couple shots at getting that done, even to get this meet happening this weekend. So it's been a slow process. And like Kevin had mentioned, he talked about baby steps. That's exactly what we're doing here. Just really small baby steps the whole entire way. So with the meet this weekend, this is actually version 2 of the meet. We actually submitted a proposal way back, I want to say in late July and early August for an event in September, and it got declined by IU. So we had to reboot and resubmit, and the numbers that we initially had were just too large. So we came back and said, hey, we'll do a meet with 50 athletes and about 30 support people. And they were on board with that. And they're also on board with the USA Swimming's US Open. So it is, we're definitely going from 50 to about 100. So that'll be kind of a big jump for us. So hopefully we can learn some things this weekend to make that second event successful as well. We're still, our club team, Jaguar Aquatics, is not even operating this season, just because there's just been a lot of baby steps that were taken, and the university isn't ready for that yet. So we haven't even started lessons or anything. What I've told you so far is pretty much what we're doing as far as the groups that are coming in. So our first event is this weekend. We go a couple of weekends, and then we've got another event. And then unfortunately, the university has already told us that we can't do any events basically December through early February. So we'll have no events during that time frame, but we'll continue doing what we're doing right now. And then we move forward into hopefully having some meets in February and March. And right now, who knows what that looks like. We've got the flu season to go through yet, and our numbers here in Indiana are climbing. So just day by day. And I've already reached out to Carrie at IHSAA to start conversations with her, because our first meet really is going to be potentially the girls' high school state meet. So that's a big jump from what we're doing here to in February. So just a lot of conversations, a lot of planning, and a lot of, just going through the motions here, or going through the guidelines from both the county and the state, making sure that we're doing everything the way we're supposed to be doing it. So this weekend will be a learning curve for us. So I'm excited that we've got an opportunity to do this. But at the same time, all eyes are going to be looking on us too, especially from the IU perspective. So not much different than what everybody else has been doing. So it's just the same stuff, and just taking a lot of baby steps to get this back on track as much as we can. So appreciate the time. And if you got any questions, by all means, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Ed. I'm just going to real quickly go through the rest of the slides. We do have this meet that Ed talked about this weekend. We're really excited about it. We have 20 teams coming in. We have our coaches, virtual coaches meeting tomorrow night. A lot of things that you all have said tonight, like Ed and I and our kind of leadership team have talked through all of this ad nauseum since June, honestly. So thank you for sharing tonight, because those were all the things that we've kind of been questioning. This is kind of our schedule. we're really excited about it. And then just real fast, USA Swimming next year is planning right now to continue to move forward with the Tier Pro Swim Series. They probably will look different. We're hoping to culminate that series here in Indy in May, right before what we hope to be the Olympic trials. We know that everybody is doing plans A, B, and C on all of these March meets. We obviously will be in touch about those meets, but hopefully, you know, we'll have some sort of championship season in March. We're hoping Speedo sectionals, we're hoping to host it here. We're going through a process right now with an organizing committee and a task force of all the representing LSC. Some of you were on the coaches call the other night. We have a planning calendar, and you'll hear more in December about this meet. And then the Tier Pro Swim Series, like I mentioned, everything is posted, and we're kind of hoping that we have some great athletes back in May, and hopefully some Team Indiana activities going on. Mid-States right now is on hold. There's a task force studying it. If we do Mid-States, it will either be in May or early June. And again, December seems to be that magic month that everybody's targeting to kind of look forward to 2021. And then hopefully a lot of our athletes will be back in Omaha in June. So thank you for joining us this evening. Great information from the three of you. I know that we didn't have a lot more time to share with other sites. If anybody has other information in addition to what we shared tonight, send me an email and we can send it out. I want to thank everybody for what they're doing. Particularly, I want to thank our panelists for giving us all that great information and the confidence. And I do have joining spelled wrong, so I apologize for that. I just noticed it. I looked over this 10 times at least, but I want to thank the three of you, particularly, and Ed and everyone else, Joe, and everyone else that's been providing these opportunities. Obviously, we all want things to be a little more robust and to be able to serve more athletes. But when you think about what's happened in the last 3 months and the strides that we've made, congratulations to you all. Collectively, you've been doing amazing things for athletes. And thank you to all the volunteers and the meet directors and the officials that are with us. We're all a team in this together. And hopefully 3 months from now, we'll be, continue to move forward. And again, thank you for joining. Anybody have any closing comments?
No, thank you so much for having us.
Oh, of course. It was great. Anyone else? All right. Well, have a good evening. Hopefully we'll cross paths somewhere soon, even though we may not be able to recognize each other. Again, what a great group of clubs and coaches and volunteer leaders we have in our LSC, and we're very grateful for all you do. Good evening, and thank you.
Bye.